For the past several weeks and couple of months, I have been doing a series on the history of creation with special emphasis on the history of evil. And to summarize, we have determined that evil is not limited to just one category of creatures, the fallen angels, but it has been found in the angels as well as in men, celestial men who did not originate on the earth like Adam and Eve, but up in the heaven. They are called sons of God. And out of the angels, they were led by this creature called the anointed cherub, whose history is told in mainly in Ezekiel chapter 28. And these celestial men, these sons of God, the most prominent of these in the Bible is Lucifer, whose story is told in Isaiah 14. Okay, and then there is Satan. Satan is neither an angel, as is commonly taught that he was an angel in heaven. No, Satan is clearly identified as a beast. So the three categories of evil creatures, and the main types of creatures in God's creation are angels, men, and beasts. So one of each of these categories or kind or species has been a chief prince of evil. So we have covered the history of the first two, the anointed cherub and Lucifer, in several studies, and now we're going to begin with the study on the history of Satan. And as we can see here in the screen here, that the word Satan or the name Satan is found in 49 verses in the Bible and 56 times, at least in the King James Bible. And the most what we learn is that Satan is both a proper name and it is also an adjective. It is the name of a creature, of this serpent dragon creature who is called Satan, but it also describes as who he is. So it's an adjective which tells us what his characteristics are. And we learn about his characteristics primarily from the book of Job, where he accused Job, and then of course in the Gospels where he tempted Jesus, and then in the book of Revelation where he's called the accuser of the brethren. So we will study these verses and these from these scriptures. So first of all, we will look at the name Satan, and also as to his definition of what Satan means, okay, of who he is and what are his characters. Okay, primarily Satan can be described in one word, which is evil, that he is pure evil. He is absolute evil, just as God is absolute good. So in that respect, Satan is the absolute opposite of God. Okay, so we will look at some definitions, and then I'm going to do a comparative study where I'm going to compare information found about creatures such as the Nagas, because the Bible tells us Satan is a serpent. The Nagas are serpents. They are actually not serpents as we understand them today as snakes, but they are actually supposed to be some sort of intelligent race that resides in the subterranean regions under the earth, in some regions in India and even in other nations surrounding there, such as in Cambodia, etc., in that area in the Eastern world. And then we will also do a little study on dragons as their story or as their history is taught in mythology and myths and legends, and even in fantasy fiction, such as that of J.R.R. Tolkien, who is the author of The Lord of the Rings. And dragons play a very prominent role in his fiction. And the interesting part about his fiction is that he actually tells us what the origin of these dragons were. And then we will continue to compare it to what we study in the Bible. And from those studies, we will hopefully be able to piece together a real history of this creature called Satan, as to what he is, who he is, and how he originated, because we understand one thing about him, that he has been evil right from his beginning, and as such God is absolutely good. He cannot create an evil creature. And when he had created the anointed cherub, we are told he was perfect. This angelic being was perfect, okay, from the day he was created until iniquity was found in him. So he had a period of time when he was not evil, but he turned to evil later on in his life. And same thing with Lucifer. He was born as a man, And, as a baby, infant, whatever he grew, so he too grew into evil. He was not born as evil. However, this Satan character, he has been a murderer and a sinner right from his very beginning. And therefore, we need to understand, if God, who cannot create an evil creature, but he does allow evil to exist in his creation to serve his purposes, how then this evil Satan have his origins if God did not create him or God did not make him? Who did? So these are the questions that will be answered hopefully in these studies on the history of Satan in the Bible and also in mythology and fiction. So Revelation chapter 12 verse 9 gives us a great deal of information about this creature called Satan. So we can read, and the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceives the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. So when we look at this verse of scripture, first of all, we are told that Satan is a great dragon, okay, and that he is the old serpent. When we look at the definition of the word dragon, which comes from a Greek word drakon, so it's basically a transliteration of a Greek word, the word literally means serpent. Okay, so dragons, although in modern fiction, they've been fictionalized as these big winged creatures, that have some sort of a dinosaurian appearance. That is literally not traditionally, that is not what dragons meant. Dragons just meant a serpent, and serpents come in various sizes and various forms, and even flying ones. The Bible even talks about fiery, which means fire breathing, flying serpent. We can read that in the book of Isaiah. So, serpents can be of various shapes and sizings. Some of them are what we equate with modern dragons, but it literally means serpent. And that word old, on which I did study in one of these videos in this series, it means, something that has been from the beginning. So this Satan, this creature, is not something that is very recent. He has existed for a very, very long time. And that again goes back to the ages of creation, which I have discussed in great length, so I'm not going to go back into it here, but it stands, but I would like to reiterate that, these creatures, the anointed cherub, who was an angelic being, his history goes so far back that there is no way for us to determine, when he first was created and when he began, what his entire history, how far back that dates. And then, of course, Lucifer, he is also very old. Okay, but out of these here, I think Satan, although he is the most recent one, that I believe he was created after the anointed cherub had been in existence, and probably even Lucifer, he came into existence still a very long time before Adam and Eve, before modern man, before this world that exists on this earth today. Other worlds have existed. And one of the prominent features of this world that preceded this present one is serpent symbolism. Serpent symbolism is found everywhere. And that tells us that just prior to this world, to this modern age, there was civilizations and cultures that existed on this earth that were serpent dominated. Okay, and I will go into that later when we get into talking about the Nagas and the history of dragons, etc., as we can read in the Bible and also in mythology and fiction. So he is the great dragon, he is the old serpent, and he is called what? He is called the devil. And we will look at the definition of the word devil, which is the Greek word diabolos, and Satan. Okay, we will look at the definition and the meaning of that word as well. Satan is both a proper name, it applies to one particular creature, but it is also an adjective which applies to basically all creatures in the Bible that are called devils. Okay, in popular culture they're called demons, but demon and devils, biblical ones, there is some variation in them, which I don't want to get into it here. But these creatures, which are evil creatures called devils or demons, they can all be called Satan, but amongst them there is one particular creature, one great dragon, one old serpent, whose proper name is Satan. He is the chief of all these devils. And what does he do? He deceives the whole world. So that is his main characteristic, which Jesus pointed out to us in John 8:44, that he is a liar and the father of lies. So the idea that the serpent deceives begins right in Genesis chapter 3, where he deceived Eve, who ate the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, which brought death and misery and pain and suffering into this world, which was necessary to serve God's purposes, which I have explained in many of my teachings on why evil exists. And if you are not familiar with those, I would suggest that you should go watch them, okay? So that is what we learn from Revelation chapter 12, is that this creature called Satan, he is the devil, he is the old serpent, he is the great dragon, he is a murderer, he is a deceiver, he is a liar, and he is an accuser. We will go into each one of these definitions and characteristics as we progress through this study. So Satan comes from the Hebrew word Satan. Okay, it is H7854 in Strong's dictionary and concordance, and it means the arch enemy of good, adversary, one who stands in opposition, who is an opponent. And this has been transliterated into the Greek and from the Greek into the English. In the Greek, it is Satanas, and again, it means adversary. In English, we just call him Satan. Satan is a name that is quite used, especially in the Middle East, in Arabic or in India. It is called shaitan, okay, which is a word which means Satan. So essentially, Satan means opponent or one who stands in opposition. In opposition to what? In opposition to that which is good. And who is good is God. Okay, so Satan is literally the opposite of God. He is the evil to God's good. He is the darkness to God's light. He is the death to God's life, and so on and so forth. So the simplest meaning of the name Satan is opponent, one who stands in opposition, as an adversary takes a stand against. And what does he stand against? He stands against everything that is God. So he is the absolute opposite of God. Opposites are wonderful teaching tools. And this is actually the reason for the existence of Satan. God created him, or God decided before anything was created to allow his own opposite, that would be evil, to his good, that would be death to his life, to come into existence and be absolute. That is absolute in its evil, just as God is absolute in his good, which means that God can do no evil and Satan can do no good. So they are actually exact opposites of each other. This is why in Genesis 1:4 it tells us, God saw the light that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. Okay, so light and darkness are opposites, and they are also separate from each other, that they have no common ground. And this is how God taught us what is light. Light could not be made visible until darkness came, and this is the purpose of darkness. This is the purpose. Light being symbolic of good, and darkness being symbolic of evil. This is the reason for the existence of evil. But God did not need just like a little bit of darkness with a little bit of light mixed in. He needed absolute darkness, absolute evil. And evil, as I've taught in the history of evil in this long series now, it began in the race of angels, okay? So it began in the race of the angels, which were led by the creature called the anointed cherub. And then from there, it also infected the race of the men that came before Adam. Creation has been filled with both angelic beings and also with flesh and blood. They are the gods of mythology, and these are celestial men. They're called sons of God. It also infected a lot of them, and the most prominent one of them in the Bible is the man Lucifer. However, in neither one of them was evil absolute. In the case of the anointed cherub, it is quite apparent that God called him full of wisdom, that he was perfect in his ways. So obviously, he had not had a beginning as an evildoer, and some residual of that which was godlike in him remained. So although I'm a little bit getting sidetracked here, angels cannot become the absolute opposite of God. It's not possible because they always have some type of godly character in them. And neither also can men. Okay? In the case of angels, in the Old Testament, God revealed himself as or he communicated or he interacted with his creatures as the angel of the Lord. So God took form as an angel before he incarnated himself as a man in Jesus Christ. So God has revealed himself as both an angel and also as a man. Jesus called himself the Son of Man. So therefore, man is always going to have, man, in case of man, is said, God created man in the image of God, okay? So therefore, neither man nor angels can be absolute darkness or absolute evil. There is always going to be a little bit of gray in them. For this reason, neither one of these races could be the absolute opposite of God. It had to be a different kind, a different species that God is not, and it is from the category of these beasts, the dragon, serpent, beast, and that is who Satan is. And that is why this, like I said, I got sidetracked here, but I just wanted to mention that the people that teach that Satan is an angel or this and that, none of that is true. Satan has been a beast right from his beginning, and he will die, or he will be judged as a beast. But evil became absolute in this race to these serpent, dragon, beasts, whose chief prince is Satan. So the important doctrine of absolute opposites in the Bible, okay? In the Bible, these two doctrines of good and evil, they are personified in God, who is absolutely good, and Satan as absolutely evil. They are the absolute and perfect opposites of each other. And again, I quoted to you Genesis 1:4, and God saw the light that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness, opposites. In Genesis 2:9 we read, and out of the ground made the Lord God to grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight and good for food, the tree of life also. Okay, the tree of life, it was the opposite of death. God knew death was going to come. Therefore, life would become necessary, but it would also become valuable. Once death had entered, what would every creature want that had become subject to death, especially man? They would need life. And this is the opposite of life and death in that garden. And look at this here, the tree of life also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil, opposites, okay? All these things have happened in creation by the plan to serve the plans and purposes of God. So God could reveal himself to us that he is good, that he is light, that he is life, okay? And unless death had come, unless evil had come, unless darkness had come, we would have never have understood it. So unless Satan had come and become the absolute darkness to God's absolute light, we would have never understood God. That's why Satan exists. Deuteronomy 30 verse 19, I call heaven and earth to record this day against you that I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing, opposites. Therefore choose life, that both thou and thy seed may live. So now I have explained to you why Satan and why evil exists. Let us continue on looking at the meaning of the word devil, which he is called in Revelation chapter 12 verse 9. So although we refer to the prince of the devils as Satan, in Hebrew is called the Ha-Satan, which means the devil or the adversary. So it has come to represent Satan's proper name. But as a matter of fact, not just the prince of devils, but all devils, all evil spirits, they all can be called Satan, because that's who they are. They are adversaries and opponents, therefore they're all Satan. Now it is quite possible that at some point in time, in the distant past, this creature, who is the prince of devils, whom we call Satan, may have had another proper name, but it is not recorded in the Bible, and there is not anywhere in mythology or anywhere else either. So I do not know what that might have been. I suspect that he did have a name when he was created, which was not Satan, because at that time he was not called Satan. He came to be known as Satan in the Bible. So therefore, what his name was in the beginning, I do not know. By the way, this is also true of the other two princes of evil, the anointed cherub and Lucifer. They also are not proper names. The anointed cherub is just identified as the anointed cherub, meaning that he was a cherub and he had been anointed. We are not given his proper name. Now, angels do have names, because the Bible tells us, that God calls all the hosts of heaven by their name. So they do have names, okay? So, but we are not given this creature's name was not given to us, and neither is Lucifer. Lucifer is not a proper name. Lucifer is more of an adjective which describes him as a light bearer, or something to do with the luminance, with the illumination. It is not his name. And that is also true of Satan. And maybe it is because God does not deem them worthy because of their evil of even being mentioned by name. That is quite a common curse in the old world, even in fiction, etc., that, the name of these creatures must not be named. Okay? And that is what I think might be the reason why the Bible does not give us their proper names. Although in the English-speaking world, and possibly even in the Middle East, etc., the word Satan is used very commonly, but I think in the Latin world, in Italy, Spain, Latin America, etc., the word that is generally applied to evil spirits or evil creatures is the word diabolos, which is translated as devil. This is a Greek word, and it is G1228 in Strong's Concordance, okay? So devil, it means a false accuser. It literally means, diabolo means to accuse. He is a false accuser, and it is used for the devil. It is one who falsely accuses and divides people without any reason. He is an accuser, a slanderer. This is so commonly taught as the character of Satan or the devil that, there are too many references from the Bible to even list here. Okay. With the article ho diabolos, the devil. This is like the devil is the prince of all the devils, who is also called Satan. Okay, Satan is called by that name because originally he accused or slandered God in paradise, being averse to the increase of man's knowledge and happiness. The children of the devil. Okay. With the article ho diabolos, which translates as the devil, it refers to the prince of, or the chief ruler of the kingdom of the devils, which is Satan. Satan is called by that name because originally he accused or slandered God in paradise, which he may actually have done even before this paradise that is being referred to, the Garden of Eden, had even been made in the ages that came long time before this present age of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. In Revelation 12:10, Satan is called ho kategoros, the accuser, as if he was standing in a court of law. It is very interesting that Jesus is called our advocate, our lawyer, and this is very, very the idea of having an intercessor or a lawyer, one for the defense and one for the prosecution. It very clearly stands out, especially in the book of Job, where Satan is the prosecutor. He is accusing Job of all sorts of things. And God himself is the defender. He is the defense lawyer. And in the New Testament, our defense, our advocate, the one who stands on our behalf is Jesus Christ. And Satan is still playing the role of this prosecution lawyer, where he is accusing the brethren before the Lord day and night. The devil still slanders God by false and blasphemous suggestions, and because he is also the accuser of the brethren before God, which is in Revelation 12, verse 9 and 10. We can read that, and also in Job chapter 1 and 2. He is called our adversary or opponent. I would be interesting, that the devil is, I've explained this many times, the devil or Satan, he is our adversary, he is our opponent. He's always standing against us, and he is also accusing us before God. But he is not necessarily God's enemy or God's adversary, okay? Because he is God's servant, that he is serving the purposes of God by being this adversary and this enemy of mankind, okay? Diabolos is used either for the prince of devils or for evil spirits in general. So the devil with the definite article is Satan, but then all evil spirits are devils, which is how they're translated throughout the King James Bible. They're not called demons or anything else. They're called devils. The Lord Jesus called Judas Diabolos because under the influence of this evil spirit, he would be Christ's accuser and betrayer. The Lord calls Peter Satan, Satan or adversary, and not Diabolos, devil. I don't know, I'm sure there's some significance in it, but I haven't really given it much thought. The prince of devils is called Diabolos 38 times, and Satan is 34 times in the New Testament, but the devil and Satan, they are both referring to the same creature who is the chief of the devils or the chief of the evil spirits that are operating in this world for sure, and also in other worlds as we read about in Revelation chapter 12. So before we go on to discuss the origins of Satan, because he certainly, although it's commonly taught that he originated as an angel in heaven, that is not what the Bible teaches. And neither is that possible that he was ever an angel. He has always been this diabolical, serpentine beast. So what we were going to do is serpent dragon. He's going to do some study in mythology and some other fictional and maybe some from cultures and different stories that are told about serpents and dragons, and we are going to see how it compares to the information that we read in the Bible to gain a little bit of understanding of the form and shape of these creatures, which are these serpents and dragons, which are the devils of the Bible. In Revelation 12:9, the devil, Satan, is called the old serpent. Okay, the serpent is the Greek word ophis, is G3789, probably from 3700, G3700, which is the word optonomai, which actually I've talked about before, but I will mention it again just a little bit here. It is through the idea of the sharpness of vision. Snakes are supposed to have, or serpents are supposed to have very sharp vision, figuratively as a type of cunning, an artful, malicious person, especially Satan. The word for snake, ophis, is derived from G3700, which is the word optanomai, which is related to vision. It is the root word for English words such as optics, which is related to sight or seeing. Serpents, especially the naga, which I will also speak about next, were thought to have mesmerizing, hypnotic stares that could hold people spellbound. To cast a spell means to throw a veil of darkness over a person's mind, to make them believe lies rather than truth, especially the truth of the gospel. And we can again read that in 2 Corinthians 4:4, in whom the God of this world, who is Satan, the devil, the old serpent, has blinded the minds of them which believe not, lest the light of the glorious gospel of Christ, who is the image of God, should shine unto them. That people are literally held spellbound because there is this veil of darkness that covers their mind. It is also interesting that Eve saw, which is again related to vision, the tree and the fruit, Genesis 3:6, before she reached out and ate it. The serpent made her see something other than what God had warned them about would be the consequence of eating the forbidden fruit. The serpent literally mesmerized and hypnotized Eve into believing his lie. So the simplest definition of serpent is just a snake, okay? But in the spiritual terms, it is a creature that has a power, a mesmerizing power of hypnotically controlling the minds of people. In mythology, in myths and legends, in folk tales, in fantasy fiction, etc., it is not uncommon to find animals that have some type of intelligence that can communicate with mankind and with each other. It could be, like I said, mammals, it could be birds, it could be fish, and any such creatures. However, worldwide, there is no beast that is as commonly found to have some sort of powers associated with them, whether they are powers, malevolent powers or benevolent powers, whether the creature is feared or revered, whether he is despised or worshipped, then the serpent. Serpent symbolism is found worldwide more than that of any other beast creature. Okay, so one particular type of serpent people, let's say, that I would like to speak about here, which gives us a little bit better understanding of this history of the serpent, which goes far further back than the history of man, as I've taught in my history of creation series, especially on the history of evil, that these serpent races, these devils, these dragons, they were created a long time ago and they have existed. But towards the end of the last age, where we get to Genesis 1:2 and we see the earth covered with darkness and with water, that came about as a result of a destruction of the world that then existed, which the Apostle Peter taught about in for example, in 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 7. And, we read that, of course, in Genesis chapter 1, verse 2. We read that about in Jeremiah chapter 4, verse 23, and other places in the Bible about these worlds that existed here on earth prior to the coming of man, modern man, that is, okay? So the world that existed just prior to the time of God's judgment upon it, which came when evil had finally become absolute in this creature, this old serpent, the devil, Satan, and his evil spirits. It is the world of the serpent, okay, of these serpent races. They were the ones that were the dominant race at that time. It was not the angels. It was not the sons of God led by Lucifer. No, they had both been, the angels and this Lucifer had been already judged and cast down to hell and the pit, as we read about in Ezekiel chapter 28 and Isaiah chapter 14. Who had not yet been cast down was this Satan, was this dragon beast. And that is the reason why, because that world that existed just prior to Genesis 1:2, when God's judgment fell upon creation, leading into judgment that went up into the heavens, okay? It was the world of Satan. And that world has continued on into the present time. The world that existed back then, the world of these Nagas, these serpent creatures, these serpent people, it was a flesh and blood world in my estimation. That they were actually here on the earth, they were actually building physical, structures, living in them, and controlling other species that were here, including the sons of God, men, the celestial men, that whose world it was prior to these serpents taking over. Okay? They were, but after God's judgment, most of them were destroyed, although some of these Naga serpent people may still continue to exist in physical form inside the earth and possibly other places on the earth. But I believe the majority of them, including the chief dragon, the great dragon, Satan himself, were killed, at least in their body, and they now exist as disembodied spirits. These are the devils of the present time. That's where they came from. That's where these devils are come in. They exist in this world because they had been judged. Their access to this world had been blocked until Adam opened the door for them, Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, and they came flooding right back in and claimed the world which was their world just prior to God's judgment upon them at the end of the Bronze Age and the beginning of the Iron Age. Okay, so these Nagas, or these serpent creatures and these serpent people, they were real, flesh creatures or corporeal creatures that existed right here on the earth. Like I said, they probably still do somewhere. There's too many tales about them coming out of the subterranean regions and mingling with people, especially in India, in northern and northeastern India, and even up into Vietnam and Cambodia and Thailand, etc. These stories are so common that it has to have some basis in reality. So let's learn a little bit about the Naga.
Serpent people are a race of beings that are half human, half serpent in various mythologies and legends throughout the world. They are often associated with ancient civilizations such as Atlantis and are said to possess great power and knowledge.
So this narrator probably himself does not believe what he is saying, that these creatures, they were affiliated with these ancient civilizations such as Atlantis, which existed not much before the world that we have today. So these old worlds did exist, so did these old creatures. And as I said, the angels built the first worlds in the heavens, and then the sons of God built the first worlds on earth. But I believe those have long gone. It is the worlds of these serpents that are still, the ruins of which most of them, some might have been from the Luciferian sons of God, but most of these are built by these serpent races. And these are what we call in India, they're known as the Naga, but worldwide they are called by different names in different cultures.
In some legends, the serpent people were revered as gods or rulers, while in others they were feared as evil creatures that preyed on humans. Serpent people have been depicted in art and literature throughout history, from ancient Egyptian and Mesopotamian cultures to modern science fiction and fantasy. While the existence of serpent people is purely fictional, they remain a fascinating part of global mythology and continue to inspire modern interpretations and adaptations.
Now, this narrator may tell us that this is all fiction, but the reality is that truth is far more stranger than fiction, okay? And that is where the problem is. Most people exist in this world in a state of hypnotic blindness, and therefore they are not open to receive such truths as the evidence of which is all over in our world and recorded in the pages of the Bible. So that is what we are trying to uncover here, is that these creatures, these evil devils, that's what they are. They do exist in reality, most of them in some type of invisible spirit form, but they are yet very influential because information is invisible, and that's how they control people, is through information. They're like radio waves. They come from wherever they come, but yet they reach our ears and our minds and influence us. That's how these creatures are. They are constantly bombarding us. They're broadcasting their lies to the world at large, and specifically to each person. And it is only through the light to the knowledge of Jesus Christ and the gospel of Christ that that spell can be broken and we can begin to see the truth, okay? So these Naga, these serpent people they are very real. And the only question is whether they are only evil spirits now, or do they still exist in physical form? And I would kind of lean towards the latter, that they still exist in physical form. This world, as a matter of fact, like I said, is far stranger than most people would believe, the type of creatures that exist inside the earth, even probably on the surface of the earth, because despite what science may tell you, the earth is generally mostly unexplored, okay? There are places where no person has ever set a foot, and they'll never set a foot upon them. And then, of course, there are the waters, there are the mountains, there are caves and dens, there's the subterranean world. The surface world upon which man lives is very, very, not even 5% of it is covered or inhabited by mankind, okay? The rest of it is just empty wilderness, and what exists in there and who lives on it is something which we can only speculate about. But these Nagas, their stories are so common that it would be very unwise to think that there is no reality to these stories that are heard not just in India but worldwide. So the serpent makes an appearance rather early on in the Bible in Genesis chapter 3, and from there his story continues right into the book of Revelation. However, it is not just the serpent that is mentioned in the Bible. A variety of serpents are written about, especially poisonous ones, such as the adder, the asp, vipers, but also, other creatures that are serpentine, but they are more what we might consider to be mythological, such as the cockatrice, and even the Leviathan is called a piercing serpent. Then, of course, there is a mention of fiery flying serpents and fiery serpents in the book of Exodus. So, there's many, many different types of serpents, which, the world is in evidence that they say there are about at least 3,000 known species of serpents in our world. And some of them, are literally microscopic in size to like the anacondas, which are like 300-pound or plus giant snakes that can swallow animals. But these are all representative. They represent there's something more than that, not just the physical world. The real serpents that concern mankind and have so right from the beginning of the history of mankind in the book of Genesis are those evil spirits whose head is this great dragon, the old serpent, who's called the devil and Satan. See, in my mind, the question is not whether these creatures have existed or they may continue to exist in some form or the other, whether as disembodied spirits or in a physical form. The real question is, about their origins. Where did they come from? When were they created? How did they come into existence? Those are the deeper questions, and they are related to the question of evil, about the history of evil, because all these creatures are evil, and it is when exactly in the history of evil, where in the history of origin can we trace their origins, especially that of this great dragon who is called the devil and Satan. And that is a question to which the answer I will get to in maybe in the next part or two to this series, because it is a complex question. And most people, especially in the church, they are so dumbed down. They themselves are so blinded and hypnotized and spellbound by these preachers that lie to them day after day, Sunday after Sunday, whenever they show up there in church or on TV, that they really can't even begin to absorb the truth that is written in the Bible, and the evidence of which is supporting evidence for which is found all across in our world. So the following is a short excerpt from an article on reptilian humanoids on Wikipedia. It tells us reptilian humanoids or anthropomorphic reptiles are fictional creatures that appear in folklore, fiction, and conspiracy theories. Okay, in folklore, in South Asian and Southeast Asian mythology, the Naga are semi-divine creatures which are half human and half snakes. Claims of sightings of reptilian creatures occur in southern United States, where swamps are common. In the late 1980s, there were hundreds of supposed sightings of a lizard man in Bishopville, South Carolina. In fiction, anthropomorphic reptilian races or beings commonly appear in fantasy and science fiction. They can be based on various reptiles like lizards, crocodiles, alligators, snakes, dinosaurs, and the fictional dragons. They are often depicted as powerful warriors, though their relative intelligence to humans varies. As with other anthropomorphic races, a greater resemblance to humans often denotes more civilized behavior. Such anthropomorphic reptilians, such as lizards and snakes, are often associated with jungle, swamps, and other tropical biomes, and as such are seen with cultural elements of similar regions, including Mesoamerican cultures. So basically what we learn is that, this form of a reptilian snake man is common across the world, not just in ancient times, because we have all these carvings and stones and temples that are dedicated to these creatures, but also in modern times in fiction. It is the most common form that is used for enemies, the aliens, etc., that we find in fiction. And there is again a reason for it, because it is based on some reality. These so-called devils, for the most part, I would say a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them are these kind of snake creatures, or were. Once upon a time, they existed in physical form, and today they exist as disembodied spirits, and they project their own former form, or some of these may actually still exist in physical form. They project that they have since time, since the beginning of man. They have been showing man this imagery, and they continue to do so even in modern times. That is why the snake and serpent symbolism is found everywhere across our world. The following is a clip from a video on YouTube, and I'll put the link in the description, which talks about serpents and serpent symbolism across the world, and has some good information about various types of serpent cultures, and also on the Naga cultures in India, which is why I have included it here.
So, what is the basis on these stories that we hear time and time again, not just in the Bible, but throughout complete world mythology about serpents and snake-like beings, intelligent reptilian, snake-like beings throughout history. The legends of them are all over the world. And the first one I'm drawn to are, of course, the Nagas. The Nagas are semi-divine demons or demigods, depending on your take there, with a snake trunk and one or more human heads. The most ancient Indian legends mention that the civilization of the Nagas was powerful at the dawn of mankind. They inhabited under the mythical Mount Meru, which is kind of like Mount Olympus of the gods in the Greek legends. In the first book of the Mahabharata, the Nagas are described living on land. Then Brahma had opened wide land and they were descended under it. Having moved into the subterranean world, Patala Nagas had built to themselves dazzling palaces shining with gold and jewels. The wise dragon Vasuki became the Tsar, the king of the Nagas, and ruled in their subterranean city, filled with unprecedented on-land treasures.
See, these stories have some basis in truth. Because what they tell us here is that, once upon a time, these Naga people, they lived upon the surface of the earth. They lived upon the land. And then for some unexplained reason, they moved into subterranean regions. And it is my belief now that based on the history of the ages, that in the Bronze Age, which was the age immediately prior to the present Iron Age, before man came on this earth, man meaning the children of Adam and Eve, these are modern mankind. Before they were created and placed in the Garden of Eden, there were these worlds that existed. And that age that came before this one was called the Bronze Age. In that Bronze Age, of course, there was the empire of Lucifer. Lucifer had created, and before people, like him that came before him, they had built this world which filled it with cities and civilization from one end of the earth to the other. Okay. At some point in time, Lucifer, got it into his head that he was God and he was going to ascend up into heaven and take the seat of God. In that attempt, he and his followers, his armies, his host were destroyed and they were cast down to the earth. Now, of course, before that time of his ascent, we are told that he had turned the world into a wilderness. So there were some very, very, great wars that happened called the Wars of the God. First, these Luciferian celestial men who were the first inhabitants of earth, they fought with the angelic the celestial angelic beings from the heavens who were led by this anointed cherub. They had wars between themselves. And then I'm sure the Luciferian, these people that lived here, they fought amongst themselves as people do unto this very day. So in that process, they had already destroyed much of the earth. Okay, and once this judgment of Lucifer befell, then I'm sure more of this surface of the earth was destroyed. And these ruins, like I said, this melted earth, ruins of buildings, etc., they exist very much unto this very day. So what that did was it left the surface area of the earth probably uninhabitable, okay, which may have been the reason why these Nagas or these serpents that were left on this earth to basically the earth then was, whatever the world of that was, the worlds that were on the earth, they came under their control. However, because the surface was so damaged and it was so uninhabitable, they moved underground. That is the reason why they moved into the subterranean regions, because the atmosphere or the surface world may not have been suitable for them any longer. So as this person is mentioning that, yes, so once upon a time they did live upon the land, but later on they moved into the underworld, into the subterranean regions. In Hinduism is called the Patala Loka, which translates into underworld, and that's where they moved. So again, when we understand biblical history of the ages, then the reasons why these things happened come to be understood. See, my interest in teaching history, the history of creation, is not so much as to teach what happened or when exactly it might have happened, but rather why it happened. Unless we can understand the reason for the past events, especially major catastrophic ones, such as a good God, why would he allow so much evil and destruction and catastrophes to strike his creation again and again and again? What purpose does it serve from him? Unless we understand that history itself, what's the point in even studying, something might have happened, right? So the why of history to me is far more important than the what or the when of history.
So, I mean, that passage right there just makes me think of Smaug under the mountain in the Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings movies. Again, you can see the European legends very, very similar to the Indian legends about these beings having tremendous treasures, and they're very ancient. They're more ancient than humans. They've been around before humans.
So this person is again correct. And that again we can learn from the Bible, that the first creatures that God created were the angelic races. Then he created the celestial men called the sons of God. And then, of course, these beasts were added at a certain point in time. But they all predate Adam and Eve, from whom modern mankind has descended. Our history is, at best about 5,000-6,000 years old. It's not that old. But the history of these ages, the gold, silver, bronze, it stretches back possibly millions, if not billions of years. So these creatures indeed have existed a long time. And also the relationship of treasure. Like you said, these Nagas, they sit upon great treasures. And what he was referring to, the Hobbit movie, which is a book by J.R.R. Tolkien, the author of The Lord of the Rings. There's a great big dragon, and what he does is he sits on a pile of gold. So, all these, the relationship of money to evil creatures, it is well established because money itself was created by the angelic races led by the anointed cherub, on which I've done a great deal of study. So I won't go into it here except to say that this Satan, serpent dragon, he is a merchant banker. Above all, he is not a horned, monster just ripping flesh as we are shown in Hollywood movies. No, his real form is that he is, well dressed, dressed in like some Armani suits and Gucci shoes and wearing Rolex watches, sitting on Wall Street as a merchant banker or in the city of London controlling the world. That's who he really is. And therefore, again, this connection of treasure with the Nagas and the serpent people and with dragons, it is a basis in reality, because the root of all evil is the love of money, and none loves money more than Satan, which is not a characteristic of his that is taught to us either in the world or by the so-called church.
And they live in a subterranean world that is loaded with riches, and they're very wise. So they are also perhaps the dragons that we hear of in so many different mythologies.
Again, there's so much truth being taught here, except the person probably doesn't understand it himself. That yes, that these creatures, they do inhabit the subterranean regions, because the Bible does talk about things under the earth. Hell itself, is inside the earth, and there are of course other regions such as the pit or the bottomless pit that is in the earth. So all these have creatures that live inside of them. So one of these races are of course these Naga. Then he said they have great treasure, and that of course we have already established that the greatest love that Satan and these reptilians have is for money. Okay, and that is something which people may not normally understand. But yes, they do. The corporate world is not based on this earth, or at least their headquarters or their management. It is done by the principalities and powers that are unseen. They are the ones that devise these banking systems and these taxation systems, which are just so convoluted that probably not a single man on this earth fully understands them, because they're not really created by man. He is talking about them as dragons. And when you look at the word dragon in the Bible, or the Greek word drakon, it really means serpent. And that is exactly what he has shown in Revelation 12:9, the great dragon, the old serpent. So, dragons are serpents. Although in Hollywood fiction, they have been changed into a category or a type of creature which is distinct from serpents, but that is not the case biblically speaking. So again, I will put the link to this video in the description, and if you want to watch it, I think he brings forth some good information.
So One of the most famous ones is Shisha, which is a 1,000-headed dragon that supports the earth and actually serves as a bed for the god Vishnu during his sleep at the ocean and intervals between the creations of the world.
So in this, again in this video, this person talks about the creation and destruction of worlds or of ages, and that is also true. But all these stories are told in mythologies and in various myths and legends. But what is not really made clear is the reason why. And that, again, we have to go into the Bible, because that alone adequately explains the history of evil as to why evil was necessary, how it came about, when it came about, and its final destruction. So that is the cause and the reason for all these various creations of these various worlds that have existed in the past and that have been destroyed. And of course, another world has taken place, the place of those ones that passed on into history. But without understanding, the purpose of evil as purposed by God, who himself is absolutely good, it is impossible to then everything makes no sense as to why things are made, why they're destroyed, why they're built again. Is they're just being run by madmen or by mad creatures? In a way they are. But again, there is a method to the madness which only can be understood by understanding that everything serves the purposes of the omnipotent Lord God, and everything has happened according to that which he has willed from before the creation of any world at all.
So very, very, there's just such a rich history with this. And outside of India, Nagas are compared with local snake-like deities, like the Lu in Tibet, the Nadi in Burma, and the Prayanak in Laos, and then dragons in China. They are described in many Vedic texts, epic poems, Puranas, Buddhist sutras, and also in some canonical Buddhist texts, for example, the Jataka. Their images are presented on reliefs in Angkor Wat in Cambodia, and just the legend of Cambodia itself is fascinating, because this is a land that was supposedly built by the Nagas. Their reliefs are on the bridges and temples all over, and very, very consistent. And one of the themes is multi-headed on one body. And it's just fascinating to get into why do we have these legends all over the world, all of them so similar. Although sometimes, depending on where you're at in the world, they're presented in a more neutral / positive light, and in others completely in more of a negative light. And again, that depends on where you are in the world. Dragons in Europe and most of the European mythologies will present them in a more negative light, whereas they're more respected in the East. So very, very interesting. And there's also, as we shall see, legends in the Americas as well. So old Indian legends have been handed down to us, and basically it talks about that they were very venomous creatures. Their bite and their breath could be considered fatal. They had a hypnotic force to them. In some ways, you could see them being the origin of a lot of the vampire legends, especially, when in relation to, say, Dracula and everything. They were unusually clever, very artful. They were considered as wise men, magicians, and wizards, capable of reviving the dead, and they can change their appearance. So they perfectly possess the art of Maya. They could penetrate through a hard material and then disappear again. So they're great sorcerers. They are the teachers of magic, and they've also wrote books.
So as musicians and sorcerers, these serpent people, or these serpent devils, they have access to technologies which we do not, man does not. Okay, and the English author, sci-fi author Arthur C. Clarke wrote, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. So they use these technologies to hypnotize people, to make them believe lies, to basically mind control them, mind bend them. All this happens because they have access to certain technologies. And then we're also told that they're shapeshifters, that they can that we do not see their real form when they interact with man. They present themselves as a man, for example. And then again, the Bible tells us, Satan himself can be transformed into an angel of light. So his, transformational abilities or his shape-shifting abilities are also recorded in the Bible. So that is something which some people look upon them as something, a powerful sages or powerful gods. But that is not what they are. They're still devils. They have technologies and powers that they use to harm and to do ill to people, even when they might give them some kind of riches or wealth, or even bring some type of temporary healing to the body, etc. It is done with a malicious purpose. It is not done to. They are not the saviors of mankind. There is only one savior, and his name is Jesus Christ. So far in the history of Satan, what I've been discussing is what is Satan, okay, as far as his appearance, etc., is concerned, and some of his characteristics, okay. So when we talk about Satan and we talk about the Nagas, etc., we come to the understanding that, what we are talking about, what I'm talking about, is Satans, plural. Satan himself is only one serpent dragon. He's a serpentine dragon creature who is the head of this whole race of Satans or serpents or serpent creatures that are called devils in the Bible. He is not omnipotent like the Lord God. He has an army. He is like a general that controls all these other creatures that probably number, in my estimation, at least in the hundreds of billions, if not in the trillions. There's that many of them, which again points to such an ancient history as to, when all of these creatures came into existence. A lot of them are modified genetically, manufactured things. When did that happen? When was Satan, this dragon beast, created? All these are questions to which we will find the answers, I believe, at least satisfactory answers, in future parts to this series on the history of evil. And now we are discussing the history of this serpent dragon creature called Satan, and I will continue this in the next part to this series on the history of evil.
1, 2, 3.
Satan, your kingdom must come down. I heard the voice of Jesus say, Satan, your kingdom must come down. I'm gonna shout Satan,